The day the homeowners association fined my retaining wall was one of those weird afternoons that felt normal right up until it absolutely wasn't. I had just pulled into my driveway with a couple bags of mulch in the back of my truck, radio still playing low, when my neighbor Ethan Mercer stepped off his porch and raised one hand like he'd been waiting for me. Ethan was in his 60s, retired firefighter, decent guy, not dramatic unless something actually mattered, and the look on his face told me something definitely did. He said, "You check your mailbox yet?" And I laughed because I hadn't even turned the engine off yet. I asked why. He hesitated for half a second, then said, "You might want to do that before dinner." Then he headed back across his yard like he didn't want to be standing anywhere near whatever conversation was about to happen. Sure enough, there it was. A white envelope from Cedar Ridge Estates Association tucked between grocery flyers and a pizza coupon. Nothing good ever comes in a white HOA envelope. I opened it standing right there by the mailbox and read the whole thing twice because I honestly thought I had to be misunderstanding it. Violation notice. My retaining wall had been cited for non-approved exterior materials and visual inconsistency with neighborhood architectural standards. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was ridiculous. That wall had been there for years. 40 feet of limestone block along the back property line, professionally installed when I bought the place in Asheville Heights outside Knoxville. The lot sloped hard behind my fence line and dropped nearly 3 feet toward the unit's uphill. Without that wall, my backyard would have been half level and half mud pit. It also controlled runoff from the rear drainage path connecting 3 neighboring lots. It wasn't decorative. It wasn't trendy. It wasn't something I built on a random Saturday because I got bored and watched too many landscaping videos. It was there because it had to be there, and everybody knew it, including the board, especially the board. A week later, I found out exactly where it came from. At the monthly neighborhood meeting inside the clubhouse, I sat in the folding chair near the back and listened while the board ran through landscaping requests and parking complaints. Then President Malcolm Reeves cleared his throat and looked right at me. Malcolm had that polished neighborhood authority energy. Perfect polo shirt, HOA badge clipped to his belt like he was carrying a badge and a sidearm. The kind of guy who somehow smiled and looked irritated at the exact same time. He folded his hands and said, "Mr. Callahan, the board reviewed your retaining wall and determined it detracts from the visual continuity of Cedar Ridge." I leaned back. Visual continuity? He nodded. "It does not align with approved hardscape standards." I said, "Interesting. Since the county approved it 4 years ago." He gave me a little smile. County approval and HOA compliance are separate matters. I got a couple quiet glances around the room. Then I asked the only question that mattered. "Can you show me where in the CC and RS it says I can't have a retaining wall built under county permit?" Malcolm shifted in his chair. He picked up a binder, flipped pages, cleared his throat, then finally said, "The board has discretion regarding community appearance." That answer hit exactly how you think it did. Meaning, I didn't have anything. After the meeting, Ethan caught me outside and muttered, "This isn't about the wall." I asked what he meant. He looked back toward the clubhouse windows, then said quietly, "Malcolm's trying to get elected to county planning next spring. Been pushing this whole image campaign around the neighborhood. Wants everything looking brochure perfect." That made more sense than I wanted it to, because suddenly the timing clicked. The new landscaping letters, fence notices, mailbox repaint reminders. It wasn't about rules. It was about optics. And apparently my limestone retaining wall didn't fit Malcolm Reeves' campaign photos. So I appealed. I sent everything. Original grading permit, property survey, photos, even the soil engineer report I paid for years ago. I wrote a calm, respectful letter. No attitude, no threats, just facts. Then I waited. 2 weeks later, another envelope showed up. Appeal denied. 30 days to comply. Failure to remove structure would result in $150 per week in fines. I read that letter standing in my kitchen while rain tapped the back windows. Then I looked out at the wall. Solid. Level. Doing exactly what it had done every day for 4 straight years. And I don't know why this part hit me the way it did. Maybe because I'd spent years trying to be easygoing in that neighborhood, staying polite, staying cooperative, never making noise, but something about being ordered to tear out the one thing protecting my own yard because somebody wanted prettier photos finally landed wrong. Really wrong. I'll pull my survey out one more time. Measured everything. Read every page of the CC and RS again. And by midnight, I was sitting at my dining table with a legal pad and one very clear thought. They wanted the wall gone. Fine. I was officially done arguing. And if Malcolm Reeves wanted compliance, I was about to give him exactly that. The next morning, I started pulling stone. No speeches, no angry emails, no dramatic confrontation. Just me, a pair of work gloves, a pry bar, and a thermos of coffee while the sun came up over Cedar Ridge. The limestone blocks were heavier than they looked. I remembered that from the original install. Back then, I'd spent a weekend helping the crew position them before the contractor finished the drainage layers behind the wall. It had taken planning, measurements, permits, and more money than I wanted to admit. Taking it apart was somehow easier and weirdly satisfying. By noon, I had the top course removed and stacked neatly beside the garage. Ethan wandered over carrying iced tea. He stood there watching for a minute, then said, "You're really doing it." I shrugged. They wanted compliance. He gave me a look and said, "Malcolm's going to regret this." I remember laughing. Maybe. Truth was, I wasn't trying to make Malcolm regret anything. I was done trying to convince people of things they already understood. The wall had a job. Everybody knew the job. If the board wanted it gone, then they were adults. They could live with what came next. Over the next 3 days, I dismantled the rest. Block by block, layer by layer. Every stone stacked clean and organized along the driveway. No debris, no miss. By Thursday evening, the retaining wall was completely gone. For the first time since I bought the place, the slope behind my fence looked raw and exposed, a long incline of packed soil dropping toward the drainage channel. And looking at it honestly made me uneasy. Not because I thought I'd done anything wrong, because I knew exactly what that hill wanted to do. Gravity is patient. That's the thing. It doesn't argue. It doesn't rush. It just waits. Friday morning, I emailed the county grading office. Simple message. Permitted retaining structure removed at request of HOA board. Documenting change for site file. Attached photos. Attached the HOA violation notice. Attached the denial letter. Then I let it go. For about 10 days, nothing happened. Warm weather. Dry skies. Kids riding bikes. Neighbors walking dogs. Malcolm passed me once near the mailbox and gave me this smug little nod like he'd won some important battle for neighborhood beauty. He actually said, "Looks much cleaner back there." I smiled. Glad you like it. He didn't catch the tone. Or maybe he did and chose confidence anyway. Then the rain showed up. A hard Tennessee rain. The kind that starts with wind pushing through the trees, then drops heavy enough to blur the windows. By midnight, it was pounding. By 2 a.m, thunder was shaking the glass. And somewhere around sunrise, I walked to the back door with coffee in my hand and just stood there. The slope had started moving. Not dramatic like a landslide in a movie. Worse, a slow, heavy collapse. Wet earth shifting downward in thick sections. The drainage path overflowing. Mud rolling over the edge and spreading across the lower lots. A wide sheet of soaked clay sliding exactly where the wall used to redirect it. I watched patio furniture disappear halfway into brown runoff behind the Bennett place. A planter tipped over near the duplex uphill, and a stream of muddy water cut straight across the shared walking trail. I stood there quiet for a second. Then I took pictures. A lot of pictures. By lunchtime, the neighborhood group chat exploded. People posting patio photos. Flooded pavers. Mud against foundations. Complaints about blocked drainage. One message from a woman 3 houses up literally said, "Why is the hill coming apart?" Ethan texted me a single line. Gravity. I laughed harder than I probably should have. Within 48 hours, the county had 3 separate drainage complaints. By Wednesday, a county inspector named Dana Alvarez pulled up in a white truck with a clipboard and boots. Dana walked the entire slope, took measurements, checked runoff patterns, then stopped near the back fence and asked me, "There used to be a retaining structure here?" "Yes." "Why was it removed?" I handed her the violation notice. She read every page, then looked over her glasses and let out one long breath. That's unfortunate, which is government speak for somebody who made a terrible decision. By Thursday, the board scheduled an emergency meeting. The clubhouse was packed, people standing against walls. Everyone irritated. Malcolm looked different, still polished, still tucked in polo, but sweating. He opened with, "We're evaluating options regarding recent storm-related erosion." A guy from uphill interrupted. "Options? My patio is buried." Another neighbor asked who approved removing the retaining wall. That room got quiet. Malcolm tried to redirect. The board acted under aesthetic authority. That was when Dana from county planning stepped forward. She had come in straight from another site visit and still had mud on her boots. She said, very calmly, "For clarity, the removed retaining wall had previously stabilized runoff affecting multiple parcels. County records indicate valid permitting. The removal directly contributed to current slope failure." Dead silence. Malcolm swallowed, then looked toward me, like maybe I'd rescue him, like maybe I'd explain. He said, "Mr. Callahan, perhaps you could have warned us." I actually blinked. Then I said I appealed. A few heads nodded. I sent permits. More nodding. I asked where the rule was. Someone in the back muttered, "He did." Then I looked straight at Malcolm and said, "And after the board denied the appeal, I complied with exactly what you demanded." That landed hard. He opened his mouth, closed it, and for the first time since this whole thing started, Malcolm Reeves looked like a man realizing the ground beneath him wasn't nearly as stable as he thought. Meeting ended fast after that. People left angry, phones out, talking in clusters. Dana stayed another 20 minutes explaining next steps. Temporary erosion barriers, drainage corrections, engineering review, and none of it sounded cheap. That Friday afternoon, my phone rang. "Malcolm." I watched it vibrate on the kitchen counter. Let it ring. Voicemail came through a minute later. His voice sounded completely different. No authority. No polished board president tone. Just strained. "Daniel, hey, I think maybe we should talk through possible restoration options." Restoration options. That phrase nearly made me laugh out loud. Because a month earlier it had been a non-compliant eyesore. Now, suddenly it was infrastructure. I didn't call back. Not yet. I walked outside instead. Looked over the muddy slope. The stacked limestone still sitting beside my garage exactly where I left it. And I had a feeling the real conversation was only just beginning. By Monday morning, Cedar Ridge looked like a neighborhood trying very hard to pretend it wasn't panicking. Contractor trucks were parked near the clubhouse. Orange County markers lined the slope. Neighbors kept stopping mid-walk to stare at the mud, like somehow it might magically crawl back uphill if they looked at it long enough. And stacked along my driveway, every limestone block sat exactly where I placed it. Clean, dry, waiting. Malcolm showed up around 9. No golf shirt this time. No clipboard. No Hawaii. Just jeans, rain boots, and the expression of a man who hadn't slept much all weekend. He stood at the edge of my driveway for a second before speaking, then finally said, "Daniel, I owe you an apology." Now, I'll be honest. I'd pictured this moment a few different ways. Maybe angry, maybe satisfying, maybe me finally unloading every frustration I'd been carrying. But standing there looking at him, he just looked tired, smaller somehow, like the whole image he'd built around always being the one in charge had cracked a little. He rubbed the back of his neck and said, "The board pushed too hard. I pushed too hard. We were trying to tighten appearance standards before next year's county review, and I convinced everyone we needed consistency." I nodded. He kept going, and I thought the wall was ugly. That part actually got a laugh out of me, because at least he was finally honest. Then he looked toward the slope. We didn't understand what it was doing, and that was the sentence. That right there, because that's what this had really been from the beginning. Not a retaining wall, not landscaping, not neighborhood standards. People trying to control something they didn't understand because they thought appearances mattered more than function. I asked him, "So what happens now?" He exhaled. "County wants immediate stabilization. Engineer says rebuilding the wall is the fastest fix. HOA covers everything." I looked at the limestone stack beside the garage, then back at Malcolm, and he swallowed. "And we'd like permission to reinstall it." There are moments where your brain offers you 10 possible responses all at once. Be sarcastic. Be cold. Make him work for it. Say no. Drag it out. I thought about all of those. Then I remember the last month. The letters. The meetings. The smug smile at the mailbox. And weirdly, I wasn't angry anymore. Mostly because reality had already handled the hard part. I said, you can reinstall it. Same design. Same placement. County-approved drainage behind it. His shoulders dropped, like he'd been holding tension for days. Then I added, but the HOA sends written notice rescinding the violation, waives every fine, covers engineering, labor, and restoration for every affected neighbor. And the board puts in writing that future county-permitted retaining structures aren't subject to aesthetic enforcement. Malcolm stared at me, then gave one short nod. That's fair. By Wednesday, crews were rebuilding. Dana from county planning inspected every phase. Drainage, gravel, reinforcement, compaction, the full thing. Ethan stood beside me one afternoon with 2 iced coffees watching workers reset limestone blocks exactly where they'd been before. He smirked. Looks familiar. I said, real sharp improvement. He nearly spit out his drink laughing. The best part wasn't Malcolm. Wasn't the board. Wasn't even the wall. It was the neighbors. People started talking, really talking, about how many warning letters have been sent over nonsense. How many decisions got made because 1 or 2 people wanted control. How often nobody questioned anything because challenging HOA leadership felt exhausting. 2 board members resigned before the month ended. Malcolm stayed, which honestly surprised me. But he changed. A lot. At the next meeting, he stood up in front of everybody and read the board's written correction aloud. Violation rescinded. Finis cancelled. HOA responsible for restoration. New review policy requiring legal documentation before enforcement. No vague estetic discretion. No more bluffing. And when he finished, he looked directly at me. Not defensive. Not irritated. Just respectful. The wall went back exactly as it had been. 40 feet of limestone. Solid. Holding the grade. Keeping runoff where it belonged. Like it had done all along. A week later, another storm rolled through. Heavy rain. Thunder. Wind shaking the trees. I stood by the back window with coffee in hand again. And watched water hit the slope. Flow redirect. Drain clean. No move. No shifting. No panic. Just the wall doing its job. Quietly. The same way it always had. And I remember thinking, sometimes the strongest thing you can do isn't fight harder. It's step aside. Let people insist. Let them push. Let them force the issue. And then let reality answer the question better than you ever could. Malcolm waved at me a few days later while I was mowing. I waved back. No drama. No speech. Just neighbors again. Mostly. But I still think about how close all of that came to becoming much worse, because somebody cared more about appearances than understanding what they were looking at. And I'm curious where you land on this one. Should I have warned the HOA one last time before removing the wall, even after the denial and fines? Or once they forced compliance, was everything after that completely on them? Drop your take in the comments, because I know this one's going to split people straight down the middle. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA turning a simple issue into a full-blown disaster, hit subscribe and stick around, because trust me, there are plenty more stories where the truth wins without anyone needing to raise their voice.